Happy New Year! It's 2021, and we are back at long last from our hiatus at the end of the year. The FCC finally allowed us to come back on the air despite that unfortunate incident with the pants. Anyway, welcome to the news for the week of 3 January 2021. Bill Gates mind controls, Section 230, 2021, Zyxel, California privacy, and Ticketmaster. All this and Jason Woods on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the attackers that put our critical systems in jeopardy. Core Impact from Core Security is a penetration testing tool that safely finds vulnerabilities using the same techniques of adversaries, with certified exploits and wizards that guide you through critical pen tests while maximizing the time of advanced testers by automating their routines. With Core Security, you can safeguard your infrastructure by limiting access, detecting threats, testing for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitoring data. Visit securityweekly.com/core security. Increased attacks, skill gaps, talent shortages, expanding attack surfaces. Cybersecurity and IT teams face these real issues every day. CyberA for Teams is the #1 NIST-aligned DoD 8140 and 8570 compliance certification and skills training platform. CyberA for Teams makes managing teams easier, guarantees measurable training outcomes, and keeps your team's skills sharp to meet today's biggest security threats. And did you know 96% of the Fortune 500 have employees training on CyberA? CyberA for Teams. Now you know. Visit cybera.it/solve to solve your team training challenges.
Well, Paul reading those ads on that Shure microphone just is really sexy. I need a minute. Okay. You can tell when he got that microphone. All right. Threatpost had their 2021 predictions. So here's a quick summary from me. Most attacks will occur at home. Okay, well, that actually, I agree with that. I mean, I think that's actually a pretty reasonable thing to say, is that most attacks will occur at home. I don't really see people running back to their cube farm anytime soon. Maybe they say fall, maybe not. I don't know, maybe never. I do think more and more people are going to stay home and work, because I think we've proven that that can be productive and that people can be productive in that environment. And I'm sure some people can't wait to get back to the office. Some of us like to work at home and get more done. So I think that one makes sense. I do think you'll see more companies allowing that on a long-term basis, and we're just going to have to find a way to make it work. Insider threats was one of their things too. So yeah, I really agree with that. I mean, I've always thought insider threats was one of the biggest threats there was, but with more layoffs and shortcuts and people being shown the door, people being asked to do more with less, work smarter, not harder, all that kind of BS that you get, the Dilbert stuff, and all the compromises that we had to make, and we continue to make, I think are all going to increase the reliance on insiders and our ability to manage that process. So when people leave, when people get frustrated and so forth, that's where those threats come from. Increased reliance on cloud resources. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. Everybody's migrated to a new realm. I don't see the world going back to 2019, so definitely that. Mobile menace. This was one that I really identified with right away. There was this day when we used to dream about getting back to the mainframe world, where in the mainframe world, there was this nice, clean wire that I put in, that I control, that connected your dumb terminal to my control center, and I could monitor everything you do. I could keep you from doing anything I didn't want to, and I had absolute control over it, and it was all run out of the basement of some building somewhere. But distributed systems ruined that. That was the promise of distributed systems, was that they could push stuff out to individuals. Empower the user was this term they used all the time. It was the stupidest thing ever happened in the world. Why would you want to empower users? They're idiots. But now basically what's happened is we've given up all semblance of being able to force everyone to work on premises. I mean, when I first went to Roger Williams University, they told me I could not get email at home. I could only get it in my office at school. I mean, that was one of their approaches to trying to maintain integrity, and a lot of companies did that. Now with BYODs, I mean, bring your own device scenario means that everybody's cutting corners. We don't even say you got to use the company's cell phone. I remember when they transitioned that, and Roger Williams said, "Oh, you can use a Roger Williams issue cell phone, and you can check your email on that." Wow. Okay, cool. But today it's just basically a free-for-all. So everybody's cutting corners in 2020. They're going to keep cutting corners in 2021 because they got to facilitate people being able to work. I really see this mobile menace as probably being one of the big threats on the horizon out there, along with all the malware that focuses on that. Ticketmaster. And yes, I am sure there has never been a crooked ticket and promotion company ever. Being a former musician, so I have my own thing. But Ticketmaster got hit with a $10 million fine. So the reason they got hit with this fine was employees, current employees, high-level senior people, used credential stuffing to get into a rival. Basically what they did was they hired someone from the rival, and that person brought with them a bunch of credentials from the company where they used to work, and then Ticketmaster's senior people encourage the use of these credentials to do various and sundry things against the other company. So now hiring your rival's senior employees to get intel, again, nothing new. I mean, it's been going on since the dawn of time. Some caveman went over to another cave person's cave and said, "Hey, why don't we take you and you come over to us and tell us what's going on over there?" But this is a big fine for hacking. And apparently the person was hired, shared URLs, and these URLs were not public, which I was immediately like, what? How is that security? So you have like non-public URLs, like really? Like security through obscurity again? But then the credentials were sent to Zishan Zaidi, who was the head of artist services, and he was encouraged in this email where these were sent to screen grab the hell out of the system. So Zaidi then and other employees did a live demo with the credentials in front of 14 other employees and used the passwords to get in, and they were showing everybody how to use this stuff. So the lesson anyway is you may need to change a lot of passwords every time someone separates or find an alternative to passwords. That might be something here. Also, don't be evil. I think that used to be Google's model before they changed. That was their motto originally, and then they changed it to something like try not to be so evil. And then, I think they went to not being evil is kind of overrated. And then finally, I think currently it's like evil. It's what happens, But anyway, speaking of Alphabet Google, 230 workers of the Don't Be Evil originator formed a union on Monday, which is the beginning of change, I think, in Silicon Valley. As the first tech workers union that I know of started forming there. Now, it's an unsanctioned, unaccredited union. And what that means is they don't have any bargaining rights. So they're not officially recognized by the National Labor Board as an official union. But there's been a lot of resistance to unionization by Silicon Valley. But this Alphabet union has gained the support of the Communications Workers of America, which has over 700,000 members. So far, the union unofficial, it doesn't have much in the way of capabilities, but it is certainly a sign of maturation in tech when you start to see unions of workers forming. Good or bad, whether you agree with that or not. Zyxel devices, firewalls, and WLAN controllers disclosed CVE 2020-29583 at the end of December, and they said that this affected USG, ATP, VPN, Zywall, and USG Flex devices. So if you use any of those, you can look up the whole thing in the story. But basically what happened was they stored you're going to love this, they stored the password for an account, and the account's called ZYFWP, which is a user account. Where is this password stored? In the firmware. And is it in plain text? Yes. So there it is again. Here we go with the same thing. So Gray Noise reported this being exploited in the wild. They were seeing people trying to use it. They called it a backdoor account on these devices. So if you have those devices, you better be careful about your outward exposure. And there is a patch from Zyxel, but of course you have to actually implement it in order for it to do anything. Section 230. This is the original law that sometimes people called that created the internet. I don't really agree with that statement, but that it is called that a lot. Basically what this section of this law did was it offered broad legal immunity to internet companies and it's once again coming under attack. This time, the attack against Section 230 is coming from the U.S. Senate, led by Mr. McConnell. And if you don't really know what this section does, it was part of the 1996 Communications Decency Act, which just sounds awful to me anyway. Anytime I see something called a Decency Act, I'm usually skeptical. But basically, what it did is if your company is defined as an internet forum, which means pretty much everything, it allows comments that are not controlled by you, and you can't be held liable for what people choose to share on their sites. So that means if I jump on Facebook and I say, something bad about IBM or Google or whatever, Facebook can't be sued by them for libel, slander, or whatever else. Now, various people and the groups change, so you can take names out and put different names in depending on the era and whatever. But lately, U.S. President Donald Trump and Mr. McConnell, who is the head of the U.S. Senate, have been after Section 230 because they want to be able to sue the deep pockets. So if somebody calls you a name on Twitter, they want to be able to sue Twitter, not the person who called you the name. Because if they can sue Twitter over this kind of stuff, they hope that Twitter will, of course, suppress that kind of stuff. Now, they claim that this is to go after liberals who, I guess, bash them on Twitter. So much for free speech. But basically, if you go on Twitter and call me fat and ugly, well, that's your opinion. And Twitter just basically acted as a medium for the comment. So it'd be like if you called me on the phone and called me names, I can't really sue AT&T over that. But if Section 230 is revoked, then I could effectively sue, instead of poor broke you, I could sue AT&T over that kind of thing. So basically the repeal of Section 230 was tied to COVID-19 relief by Mr. McConnell, and it is an agenda item for Mr. Trump in the last days of his time in office, but opponents of the repeal called it a poison pill for the sanctity of the internet. So, ElectroRAT is a Trojanized remote access tool which has drained at least 6,500 crypto wallets. Nobody's sure exactly how many have been drained and how much money was involved. This is a new one that was written in Golang, and it can be compiled for Windows, Linux, Mac OS. Various apps associated with cryptocurrency like Jam, E-Trade, and DAO Poker, which are all apps that have cryptocurrency components to them. And DAO Poker was one that was specifically involved in this. Basically, we're Trojanized with this tool called ElectroRAT. The malware, once it's installed in your machine, of course, if you install DAO Poker, basically the malware is installed at the same time, and it goes after your private wallet keys. So it's specifically looking for crypto wallets and the private keys that go along with them. And once they have that, because it's a remote access Trojan, they can use that private key to go in and drain your crypto wallet. The app uses pastebin pages to get the command and control IP address, and Intezer, which is the firm that was reporting on this rat, said that it appeared that the malware may have been operating as early as January of 2020. And so this rat is a part of the new Golang generation of malware, which seems to be seeing an increased presence there and a lot more usage of Golang as a base language for writing malware. The CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, was approved in November by voters in California and will go into effect January 1st, wait for it, 2023. So not now. Like the GDPR, this is a pretty far-reaching act, and it's going to affect anyone who is doing business on the web in California, which means it's going to actually affect a lot of other people, because like GDPR, it means that companies that want to do business in California will have to comply with the California law, even if they're not based in California and even if they do business elsewhere. It's going to create a new agency in the Golden State. Basically, the act defines sensitive personal information. So they went in and they started defining what that meant, like social security numbers, driver's license numbers, birth dates, and all this kind of stuff. And they will allow consumers to ask for this information to be restricted and not be sold to others. It also adds the right to deletion, which is something a lot of people have been wanting, the ability to go to a company and say, I would like you to delete all reference to me or any information about me from your site. it basically grants extended rights into what can be collected for advertising, and it's going to provide compensation. So this is a big one to me. It's going to provide compensation to consumers for data breaches. So that means companies are going to have to pay when they incur a breach. It's a pretty far-reaching law, and it's definitely going to have a lot of details ironed out before it goes into full effect in 2023, and it will likely affect more than just the citizens of California, a la the GDPR. When we return, Jason Wood is back. Yay! So stick around.
Do you know where your organization's crown jewel data is, whose data it is, what it contains, and if it's flagged, tagged, and classified accurately? Defense in Depth requires Discovery in Depth. At Big ID, they help organizations uncover dark data, classify sensitive and regulated data, meet compliance requirements, and take action for data on-prem, in the cloud, and everywhere in between. Learn more about how Discovery in Depth can change the way enterprise organizations find, classify, and protect sensitive data at securityweekly.com/BigID.
His New Year's Eve party was simultaneously described as an orgy of sensual delights by CNN, a festering tower of buffoonery by the BBC, and like having your soul sucked by the AP News. Welcome to the new news year, Jason Wood.
That sounds a whole lot more awesome than I remember.
Well, we can all fantasize. That's what I was imagining you doing on New Year's Eve.
That was? Just wasn't that exciting. But it was a good time. So, yeah, everybody, it's good to be back with you again. Hope you all had a happy and safe holiday. This week, one of the things that caught my eye was an article on Threatpost about tech companies being hit with ransomware. Now, normally this is not something that I would find to be terribly new or novel, or tech companies being video game companies, but new or novel or something I would necessarily talk about. But a few things popped out at me that got my attention, and primarily this is based around some of the attribution to this attack. Or these intrusions. So what is alleged is that the group tracked as APT27, or otherwise known as Emissary Panda, is suspected in ransomware infections at least 5 video game companies, some of them rather major. And again, there's a lot of ransomware occurring. So what's the big deal? Well, what I thought was interesting is Emissary Panda is suspected to be a group backed by the People's Republic of China, and has been historically focused on espionage, particularly military and political information across a variety of industries. And ransomware is a bit of a new endeavor for them. And so that kind of jumped out at me right away. Why on earth is a nation-state-backed group looking at collecting cash? According to a paper written by the Global Threat Center, and is linked to in the Threatpost article, which you can find in the show notes. This activity occurred around the time that COVID-19 was really running rampant in China, and they were going through severe disruption there. Now, this is just me speculating. I have no information of this from work or anything like that, just from what I read in these articles. But to speculate on it, maybe there's something going on. They look at it and say, "Hey, folks, sorry, budget cuts. We can't give you the same amount of money that you had previously to conduct your operations." So, see what you can come up with. And after all, since they're already pretty good at breaking into organizations and doing things that are considered generally naughty, they can just leverage that and move into a new world here, and try and maybe enhance their budget by conducting some ransomware operations and extorting money from their victims. Also makes me kind of wonder what guidelines they might have, if that happened, what kind of guidelines they'd have been given in this situation. The last thing you'd want to see is one of your groups run over and stomp on the operation that another group was conducting. So I don't know. We were about to get this information and then you encrypted it and locked it all up and nobody can get access to it. What would be the repercussions of that occurring? Regardless, what I thought was interesting is, the evolution that's occurring here. Here we have a nation-state group, alleged to be a nation-state group, focused on intelligence, suddenly moving into financially motivated attacks. Why are they doing this? What is driving that? One of the things that stood out to me, this really kind of illustrates in some ways that the attacks that are being perpetuated by these groups, are perpetrated by these groups, are being executed against us by very human adversaries. You know, sometimes we look at the intruders in our environments and we get focused on the technical details of what's happening and whatnot. But at the end of the day, there's another person back there, or persons, trying to commit this intrusion, and they're thinking and they're responding to what we're doing as defenders, as well as, you know, things that are going on inside of, you know, occurring in the world. And in this case, it has led, you know, whatever that is, has led an intelligence organization to now go after use a financial motivation to collect money. One of the things I also thought was interesting from this intrusion, typically when you look at a ransomware operation, they're dropping some kind of tailored ransomware binary on the system to lock up data, facilitates in with their infrastructure and the whole bit so that they can collect payment and things like that. In this case, though, Emissary Panda decided to use Microsoft BitLocker as the mechanism of encryption. And, you know, after all, why drop a payload that could be detected by some kind of endpoint detection and prevented when we can just use a tool that is built into the operating system? Security companies are not going to go out and turn around and block BitLocker by default, because organizations depend on that to encrypt their laptops and things like that in case hardware grows legs and gets stolen. So, you know, this was, you know, it's kind of an interesting play here to use, you know, takes living off the land to a new level here, if you will, particularly in regard to ransomware operations. It's not something I've really heard of before. Maybe I missed it, but this struck me as an interesting technique that they're using. Now they're not using, again, a specific built ransomware payload to tie into their infrastructure. They're having to take a more generic encryption tool suite and then build that into some kind of method for them to get the key, lock data up, get the keys out so that they have control of that, facilitate some kind of ransom note, and then, you know, to get the keys back once they collect the payment. But it's certainly within the capabilities of a threat actor group like this. Now, one of the keys, though, to any article like this is all of this is built around the idea of this is a known threat actor group out there, and we're able to attribute the activity that occurred before and now these intrusions back to this group, Emissary Panda. You know, to do this kind of attribution, we have to track enough tactics, techniques, and procedures and infrastructure and things like that to get overlap between different intrusions, and as well as other information that's collected by threat intel groups. And, you know, in a sense, this sounds very kind of vague. I don't know. It's hard to define, but if you know, I think look back at places that I've worked at, and each of those companies had their own culture, their methods of doing things, and they lasted, you know, quite a while beyond people coming in and out of the company. You know, something got us started on how we went about doing something, and we stuck to that, and it evolved rather slowly. The same thing is going to happen here with these type of threat actor groups. The only way to avoid that is for them to essentially stand down, decide to retool, and come back out to look different. And even then, they have to work to avoid their culture and how they do things. So you can see that, you know, if we collect enough of this information, we can start to paint a picture about, hey, this is the same basic type of stuff, and it keeps having these type of characteristics. This looks like this is a single group. There's not much information in the article here about attribution, about how it worked. They just say that it was APT27 or Emissary Panda. But it is, I think, worth reading through. Honestly, I've been really fascinated as part of my work and my day job to see intrusions, see how they evolve over time, how threat actors respond to different things occurring, either with security products or companies taking steps to prevent them from accomplishing their mission and how they react to that, and then we continue to react back and forth, as well as potentially in the case of COVID hitting and causing problems maybe with budgets or who knows what, causing them to change some of their motivations. So it's an interesting read if you look at it from that standpoint. There's also some information about the specific tools that they use that you can go ahead and check out. Go ahead and check out the link to the Threatpost article. It's in our show notes. Also includes the link to the paper that I cited. You can find that on securityweekly.com.
All right. Thank you, Jason. And finally, I love a good conspiracy. And the 5G conspiracy is a really good one. The whole thing about nanoparticles and it's crazy. And I like them. They're fun. But now the 5G conspiracy has its own circuit diagram. So the schematic, which has made the rounds on pretty much every social media platform, purports to show the 5G chip diagram, and this is the chip diagram which will allow Bill Gates, I'm not making this up, this is really what the conspiracy says, that this chip is going to allow Bill Gates to use 5G to force everyone to acknowledge that Windows ME was really not so bad. And also they want you to donate your bone marrow to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in a plastic bag or something like that. But it sure looks like it would work. You look at a circuit diagram, and I haven't looked at a lot of circuit diagrams since I was, took double E classes and back in the 80s. And, it has a schematic. So it must be something legitimate. But apparently the schematic is actually for a Boss Metal Zone MT2 guitar pedal. And it was a joke that was posted on a Romanian language Facebook page. But various people, I think it started in Italy, people thought it was real. They started reposting it. They dumped it into even crazier conspiracy theories that were worthy of like Newsmax or Epic Times or something like that. And now I did get detained once by airport security. The TSA actually strip searched me. And they called the bomb squad because I had a guitar pedal. It wasn't a Metal Zone pedal, but I had a tube screamer in my bag. And the bomb squad had to come to the airport and clear the tube screamer. And when they got there, the bomb squad guy was like, "That's a guitar pedal." And I had been telling this TSA agent this for like 2 hours, going, "Look, it's a guitar pedal." Literally, they make them. And he's like, "Well, it's scanned as something weird. It's got circuits and a battery." And I'm like, oh, my God. But anyway, they finally acknowledged it was a guitar pedal. We're like, "Thank you for your cooperation, sir." I was like, great to know we're being safe and secure. But anyway, at least you can sound good while you're having your mind controlled by Bill Gates. So, now I have to go and install Windows NT 4.0 for some reason I can't quite explain. And that's the news for in the continuing time of plague. There is a vaccine being distributed. The science says it is safe, so take it if they offer it to you. I'm Doug White, and that's the news for the new year. See ya.